What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement and welcome to the RS Dynasty channel. I'm Ron, and when the NFL draft happens, it is a dynasty landscape shifting event. Rookies get landing spots, veterans get displaced, and it throws the entire market way off. And now that we have had about 3 weeks since the NFL draft, we are starting to finally get startup ADP from dynasty drafts started after the NFL draft. So now what we're going to do today is leverage this new startup ADP versus my personal rankings to give you my 9 must-buy dynasty trade targets for after the NFL draft. As always, if you enjoy, subscribe, leave a like if you're new, and let's talk about our first trade target. All of these guys are buys, some of them for contenders, some of them for rebuilders, all across the board, all shapes and sizes. And first up, we have Chris Olave. He is going as pick 73 in Dynasty ADP. This is from Dynasty Data Lab. Shout out to them, where they compile real sleeper drafts that have happened since May 1st and compile it into a ADP database. And Chris Olave is going pick 73 as the wide receiver 25. He is my pick 59 as the wide receiver 23. So I'm about a round and a half ahead of consensus, 2 wide receiver spots ahead of consensus. Essentially, I have him a tier up from where the market has him, and here's why. When we first talk about Chris Olave, there is an inherent stench. No one likes the Saints. There's no more Derek Carr. They draft Tyler Shuck, who nobody likes, and the team just looks like a dumpster fire. But at the end of the day, I want good players who are young in Dynasty. Situations change all the time. Just a few years ago, Washington was a dumpster fire. We've seen teams like the Bengals be a dumpster fire. And then all of a sudden, things happen in the NFL. Teams turn their franchise around. And even when your team's a dumpster fire, right, Malik Neighbors with the Giants, still sometimes talent can win out in bad situations at the wide receiver position. And that's why I like Chris Olave. Now, of course, on top of the Saints, he has the concussion stuff, right? He has, over his entire career, I believe he had a concussion at Ohio State. He had a concussion last year in week 6 and then last year again in week 9, which was very scary. But he then took off the rest of the year. He could have played at the end of the year. He decided not to. He did get some full practices in to just kind of, be a part of the team. But he took the rest of the year off. Now, it's tough to quantify like how many of the concussions are because Derek Carr throws hospital balls. But if you've ever seen the Netflix documentary series with the receivers, right? It had like Devontae Adams, George Kittle, etc. Devontae Adams like straight up said like Derek Carr is trying to get him killed. Like I'm not trying to play with him as my quarterback. I'm connecting dots here, but I think Derek Carr is a little bit more prone to throwing hospital passes, what I would say. I'm not going to say that Tyler Shuck is going to be some saving grace, but maybe he'll protect Chris Olave a little bit more. And I'm willing to buy the dip right now on Chris Olave because, again, at the end of the day, I want to take shots on young, talented wide receivers. That's what he is at age 24. And if we look at his classmates here, right, these 2022 receivers, you have Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave. We look at their points per game, their yards per out run, their targets per out run, and their first downs per out run. So that is just essentially points per game is your production, yards per out run is your efficiency, targets per out run is your volume, and first downs per out run is not just are you a big play merchant for your yards per out run, or are you actually an engine within your offense. And Chris Olave paces very well. He has a better points per game than Drake London over their entire career. So this is a 3-year sample at this point, which to me I think is fair. Then you have 2.21 yards per out run, the best on this entire list, 25.4% targets per out run, tied for the best on this entire list, and 10.9% first downs per out run, tied for best on this entire list. These are 2 players that are going way ahead of him in startups, right? We see the Dynasty Data Lab ADP. Drake London's going at the 212. Garrett Wilson's at the end of the 3rd, and then you have Chris Olave as the 701. Now, of course, have those players earn the right because they are on better teams than the Saints. They don't have multiple concussions. Have they earned the right to have a gap? Sure. But a 3-round gap, or no, yeah, that's like a 3-round gap between Garrett Wilson, a 4-round gap between Drake London, to me is just too far. And we've actually had Garrett Wilson as a sell on this channel. If this is something you can do, right? This is keep trade cut, of course. Keep trade cut. Take it with a grain of salt. I'm just saying if there is an offer out there where you can give up a Garrett Wilson, get Chris Olave in a future 2027 first, which we'll probably make a video on that sometime in the next few weeks, just covering that class, but it's really strong, right? You have Arch Manning, you have DJ Lagway, Jeremiah Smith, Ryan Williams, Nate Frazier out of Georgia, you got Dylan Raiola, you got a bunch of guys in that class. I don't want to be scooping up those picks. So if you could get Olave in a future first for Garrett Wilson, I would do that all day long. Some other trades I found on the Fantasy Calc trade database here. Chris Olave for Sam Darnold in a third. There's a lot of these quarterbacks. We're going to talk about some quarterbacks here in a second. But if you find yourself, maybe you have a team where you have, I don't know, let's just say talking out of thin air. Let's say you have Dak Prescott, J.J. McCarthy, Jalen Hurts, and you stumbled into a Sam Darnold huge hit last year. If you can take Sam Darnold in a third and turn that into Olave for a team that's QB needy, I would do that all day long. Olave and a future third, or Olave and a future two to get the 109, I'm fine with that as well. If you're sitting in the first round of a rookie draft and Emeka Egbuka goes off the board and you're staring down Colston Loveland, Tyler Warren, RJ Harvey, Caleb Johnson, Luther Burden, Jackson Dart, etc., I have Olave over all those guys. So if you can squeeze out Olave in a second for your 109, I would be doing that all day long. Now, our next player that is a must-buy candidate for me, and it's a similar idea. A few of these buys are all in that same realm of young, talented receiver that I think is due for a bounce back here soon. And our second buy is Jaylen Waddle, whose ADP is pick 80 as the wide receiver 29. He is my rank 66 as my wide receiver 26. So I am 14 spots higher than consensus, so about a round and a half and 3 wide receiver spots. Again, having him up there in a tier with Olave ahead of some other players. And again, it's a similar thing when we look at Waddle. You can see, compared to his classmates, right? So now we have I think that these guys are 4 years in the NFL. Devontae Smith, Jaylen Waddle, Nico Collins from that 2021 wide receiver class. Jaylen Waddle's 13.8 points per game is tied for the highest on this list. 2.09 yards per out run is better than Devontae Smith for the second most. 22.2% targets per out run, better than Devontae Smith for the second most. 10.3% first downs per out run, first among this entire list. So over his entire career, he's been a really, really good receiver, and you can buy him at a discount, right? Where if you look at where Devontae Smith goes, he goes end of the 5th round. Jaylen Waddle goes middle of the 7th. So you're talking about around a little bit, it's probably like a round and a half difference of ADP when it comes to Jaylen Waddle and Devontae Smith, when I think they should be pretty much back-to-back. Now, with Jaylen Waddle, and if you want to contextualize what just happened with him this past season, it was ugly. The Dolphins were just completely ugly offense, but this is an offense I want to be buying low on. We can see, yes, he had like a 10-point-per-game season. He was the wide receiver 50 in points per game. That is absolutely brutal. But in 10 games with Tua, he was at 11.5 points per game, which isn't awful. It's in that range of where George Pickens, Calvin Ridley, Jaden Reed, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Xavier Worthy all were last season in games with a healthy Tua. Now, of course, the concern is, well, Tua's been hurt. Tua's been banged up. And I don't know that that is the case. Over the last, I want to say, so since Mike McDaniel came in, so this is since 2022, he's only missed 2 games less than Joe Burrow, I believe. I was looking at the stats when I was making this video. I was actually going to make Tua a buy, but I didn't end up pulling the trigger on it. But Tua hasn't missed as many games as you would think. I'll actually look it up now. He missed a lot of games last season, but he already kind of showed that the concussions aren't going to be a deal breaker for him. And then the year before that, he played 17 games. The year before that, 13 games. And that's like over 40 in his last 3 seasons. And it's not that far off of guys like Burrow. This might be the graphic right here. Nope, that is not the graphic. I thought I could find it for you guys. Is there any way? Could this be it? There we go. So when you look at the games played, so this is in the Mike McDaniel era, since 2022, the Mike McDaniel era, you have, in terms of points per game scored for quarterbacks. Now, I wouldn't have Tua as a buy per se, because I think you can just get his production right, pocket passing quarterback later, who we'll talk about. But when you look at just how many games he's played over the last 3 years, it's only, 2 games less than Joe Burrow, 4 games less than Lamar Jackson. He gets an injury-prone label, and don't get me wrong, he definitely doesn't stay healthy. Only 2 games less than Trevor Lawrence as well. But over this 3-year sample of Mike McDaniel, it was bad last year, but over the 3-year sample, it hasn't been awful. It hasn't been, oh my God, he can't stay on the field at all. He played fully healthy in 2023. And with Jaylen Waddle, when we get back to him, he is in a spot now where they got to pay him. They got to pay him. He is guaranteed $76 million, 7th most guaranteed money for wide receivers, tied with Ayuk for the 7th most. To put into perspective, DK Metcalf signed his big deal this offseason, only $60 million guaranteed. So Jaylen Waddle is getting wide receiver 1 type of money despite being next to Tyreek Hill. That is how much money they have tied up in him, and they can't get out of his contract until after 2027. So he's locked in for the long term. And when you look at what Mike McDaniel has done since he's been the Dolphins head coach. I tweeted it out the other day, but their offense has been pretty much top 10 in every metric. Yeah, Mike McDaniel from 2022 to 2024 with the Dolphins, 10th in EPA per play, 8th in success rate, and in games with Tua's EPA per dropback is 5th in the NFL. Really, really good stuff. They were outside the top 20 in EPA per play last year, obviously because the offensive line was banged up. You also had, of course, Tua banged up, and it was just kind of a shit show altogether. Tyreek Hill, people don't talk about, also had like a wrist/thumb issue he had going on, but this is a team that should have a healthy Tua. McDaniel has a long track record of having a good offense, and then also they keep throwing resources at the offensive line. They sign James Daniels in free agency, who had a really strong start to 2024. They draft this guy in the second round, Jonah. It's like Saviniai. I don't know, but they draft him in the second round to guard, and then Patrick Paul in 2024. So there's upside. They keep throwing draft picks. They keep throwing free agents at this offensive line, and this defense is going to regress a lot. It was actually a top 10 EPA per play defense last year, the Dolphins, and now that's probably going to regress. There's no more Javon Holland. You also have Jalen Ramsey who could get traded, and defenses year to year bounce all over the place. And when you can see what you can buy Jaylen Waddle for, it's pretty nuts. Like, we are talking about, Jaylen Waddle for Chuba Hubbard. We were talking about A-Rich in a second for Waddle in a third. Like, all day, if I can use Waddle, like Waddle in a 3 for somebody in a 2 to tier up to Waddle, or one of these, Chuba Hubbards, one of these, I'm trying to think of guys in this range like Alvin Kamara. If you can do anything like that for Jaylen Waddle, I would be very much interested. Now, our third buy candidate is somebody we just talked about on the skyrocketing video. Now, I will be honest, compared to the market, I'm not all that higher on than consensus when it comes to Justin Fields. I have Justin Fields right now as my pick 79 as my QB 23. I don't know, my phone's going off. QB 23. That is ADP. He is my pick 90 as my QB 25. So ADP pick 79, QB 23. He's my pick 90, QB 25. So I'm actually about a round lower than consensus, but I think in your leagues, he's not going for that. Like, there is a bit of a disconnect. We've talked about this on the rookie draft video where when you're starting from scratch in a vacuum, there's some players when you're building a team from scratch that get pushed up, right? Like a Justin Fields. If you don't have a QB2, all of a sudden there's going to be Justin Fields thirst in your league. But if Justin Fields is rotting away on somebody's bench in your league and you don't necessarily need a quarterback, you're not going to get a crazy return. Like, if I shopped around Justin Fields, I wouldn't get as much as his startup value would indicate, if that makes sense, right? When we look at these trades that have happened, these are from Fantasy Calc, where these are real trades in real leagues on Sleeper. You can see he is going for Justin Fields in a 3 for ETN in a 2, Justin Fields in a 4 for 2 future seconds, like all day long. If I could trade him for future seconds, if I could trade him for any second outside of the top 3, right? So 201, 202, 203, no thank you, but 204 and later, right, when you get to like Jaden Higgins and Trey Harris and Scatabo and Tuin, who I love, but if I could trade those guys away for Justin Fields, who is a great quarterback to own on a contending roster, I would do that all day long. Now, we talked in depth about Justin Fields on my skyrocketing video, but just to kind of give you the cliff notes here, let's go from the bottom up. Right now, Aaron Glenn is in love with this kid. He said, there's a quiet confidence about that man that's unshakable, Aaron Glenn says. Then we have Dwayne McFarland. He does floor, median, and ceiling projections for every quarterback as like a projection exercise, similar to like what Mike Clay will do. He projects out the entire season. In terms of ceiling projections for quarterbacks going out to the top 10 of redraft, Justin Fields has the highest ceiling at 23.6. Then you have Ian Hartitz saying 4 quarterbacks have finished in the top 5 for fantasy points per dropback in each of 2022, 23, and 24. Lamar, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts. This is somebody who's going to score fantasy points. He averaged over 19 points per game as like a top 10, top 6 quarterback option when he started for the Steelers last season. And then at the top, Rich Kamini, a big Jets beat reporter, a $30 million guarantee, 3 draft picks on offense, no quarterback picks. The Jets want Justin Fields to be more than a post-Rodgers transition quarterback, and if it doesn't work, a loaded QB draft in 2026. Pretty much what they're doing is they didn't draft a backup quarterback. Jordan Travis medically retires. It is just Justin Fields and Tyrod Taylor strictly as the backup, that they have made known to Tyrod Taylor that he is the backup. You are going to get, 15 plus games of Justin Fields this year where he's going to score a ton of points for you on a contending dynasty team. And then you have the upside where if he plays well, all of a sudden the Jets extend him and Aaron Glenn sees him as this land of misfit toy kind of thing, sort of like what they did with Jared Goff, where it's like, oh, well, your team didn't want you, we do, we'll extend you long term, and then all of a sudden Justin Fields is a long-term starter. He's giving you a ton of fantasy points. Then if he locks in a deal long-term, he's all of a sudden a top 48 startup pick in fantasy drafts. So I think that there's upside from a future value standpoint. There's upside even in the near term where you are getting a massive points per game advantage comparative to the price of acquiring Justin Fields, right? Like, this is Mike Clay's projected points per game for the top quarterbacks with minimum 10 games played in his projections for this season. And after Justin Fields, you get down to like the pocket passer territory is what I would say, of like McCarthy, Prescott, Herbert, Lawrence, like guys who sort of scramble but not really. Like I would say, light scramble would be that tier of McCarthy, Dak, Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Caleb. But you have Justin Fields in this range with, Kyler, Anthony Richardson, Justin Fields at 17.5 points per game. Of course, A-Rich only has 10 projected games played. His issue is he has Daniel Jones, doesn't have full buy-in from his team. Justin Fields is getting the keys to this offense, and at 17.5 points per game, he is going to outscore assets that are so much more expensive than him in Dynasty. He's going to outscore Caleb Williams, Drake May, Bryce Young, Cam Ward, all of these guys, CJ Stroud, Jordan Love, all of these guys who are top 36 picks in startups, Justin Fields will outscore. So if you can buy him for cheap, start him, and then again, you have that upside where he could be the long-term starter. It's a very low percentage, but it is there. Like, it's not just a one-year rental. There is upside for more if he plays well. So I really do like Justin Fields. If you are a contender, maybe you just took Cam Ward as your QB2, or maybe you have you have somebody pretty ugly as QB2, like Sam Darnold, or Aaron Rodgers is like retiring on you, or Kirk Cousins. Justin Fields, I would go out there. I'm not using any first. I do want to make this clear. I'm not using any firsts to get into Justin Fields, but if I can use any future seconds and any 2025 seconds outside the top 3 picks, right, 204 and later, I'm doing that all day long. Now, our fourth buy candidate here, Jaden Reed, and he's of the same idea as the first two, Olave and Jaylen Waddle. Talented, young receiver, this time in a good offense. Jaden Reed, his ADP is pick 109 as the wide receiver 44. He's my pick 97 as my wide receiver 42. So two wide receiver spots higher, but like a full tier higher with Jaden Reed. And we're going to do the same exercise. We look at the points per game, yards per out run, targets per out run, first downs per out run for guys in his draft class. He has 12.55 points per game, higher than JSN, lower than Flowers, 2.13 yards per out run, highest on the list, 21.3% targets per out run, better than JSN, worse than Zay Flowers, 7.9% first downs per out run, better than JSN, worse than Zay Flowers. And you have a tweet from Fantasy Kosh here. To anyone with Jaden Reed, to anyone with eyes, Jaden Reed is good. To anyone with access to basic yards per out run, Jaden Reed is good. Going to buy the dip on the best wide receiver on a team coming off a weird 28 pass attempt per game season because their QB's knee almost died week 1. You have a tweet from Jacob Rickroad that I found interesting where, yes, the Packers drafted Matthew Golden. They drafted Savion Williams. And this is why I'm buying. Everybody is now much lower on Jaden Reed, right? They draft a wide receiver in the first round, then in the third round. It seems like they're out on Jaden Reed. But I'd rather buy the dip on a player I believe is talented, right? Stephon Diggs, similar thing happened in Minnesota. They draft Laquan Treadwell, and Stephon Diggs still balled out. At wide receiver, talent wins out. I believe Jaden Reed has that. He started out super, super hot, where he was the wide receiver 4 through the first 6 weeks, and then he got banged up. He had an ankle injury, a calf/shin injury, and the route participation matches up, where over the first 7 weeks, he hit over 75% of the routes 4 out of 7 weeks, then only twice from weeks 8 through 19. So his playing time got scaled back after his injuries and kind of up and down play and like a weird Malik Willis area of time for this team. But I do just believe in Jaden Reed long term. I also do believe in this offense, right? Where last year in 2024 with Love injured, they were 32nd in neutral pass rate, minus 8% pass rate over expectation. The year before that, they were 20th in neutral pass rate, plus 1%. And in the entire LaFleur era, they have been 16th in neutral pass rate. We should see plenty more pass attempts than we did last season, which is huge. And then also on the bottom, the Green Bay offense during the LaFleur era has been 3rd in EPA per play since 2019. If you only want to do the Jordan Love era, it has been 6th in EPA per play since 2023. So LaFleur is just going to always coach a good offense. I want good players on good offenses. Jaden Reed fits that build, and if Savion Williams can get more of the gadgety stuff so Jaden Reed can play real wide receiver, I think that is going to be absolutely massive for him. Now, in terms of what you can sell to get him, he's super cheap, man. If I could take a future second for Jaden Reed, I would. If I could take Cam Scatabo, who I love Cam Scatabo, but a day 3 running back, mid-second, sure. Give me Reed for that asset. Tucker Kraft, even like Chris Godwin, Alvin Kamara, A-Rich if I don't need a quarterback, Khalil Shakir, like any of the guys on this list for Jaden Reed, I would be open to all day long. Now, after Jaden Reed, our 5th buy, we have David Njoku. He's going at pick 117 as the tight end 12. He is my 105 as my tight end 8. So I'm about a round or so higher than consensus, 4 tight end picks higher than consensus. And as always, I did want to say, I haven't mentioned it yet, but my entire rankings with my buys, sells, trade targets, my rookie rankings, my top 200 Dynasty startup rankings, my prospect models across the board, you can find them on Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. There'll be links to that in the description and the comment section down below. I'm just pulling my buys from that list to you for that video, but there's plenty more on there. Now, with David Njoku, to me, we're going to do, I don't know how you guys feel when I do this, and I pull up the Mike Clay projections. Then we have, their age, keep, trade, cut value, their projected points per game. But David Njoku, according to Mike Clay, is projected for 11.6 points per game. That is 0.1 less than TJ Hawkinson. David Njoku is 1 year older than TJ Hawkinson, or like not even. He's way cheaper, and he's projected for the same amount of points per game as TJ Hawkinson. If you want to take that a step further as well, if we look at tight end points per game over the last 2 seasons, he's at 12.95 points per game as the tight end 5 over that stretch, outscoring Sam Laporta, Evan Ingram, TJ Hawkinson, and Mark Andrews. And yet, he is basically not free, but for a tight end, he's free. And I have him on some teams I'm trying to rebuild on, and I can't sell him for anything. Like, he is free to acquire right now for what should be a top 5 to 8 tight end easily in points per game. It's him. It's Jerry Jeudy as the top dogs in this Cleveland Browns offense. And yes, the quarterback situation is ugly, but it's been ugly for the last 2 years, and he's still been the tight end 5 in points per game. They've been top 5 in pass attempts over the last 2 seasons. I expect them to do something very similar this season. So David Njoku to me is a no-brainer. If we look at where he's going in startup ADP, he's going at the end of the 10th round. If I can tear down from Dalton Kincaid to Njoku and net a draft pick, I would. If I could tear down from Kyle Pitts or Tucker Kraft to David Njoku for a draft pick, I would. Like a Zach Charbonnet or any of these like handcuff-style running backs that are pushed up draft boards, give me David Njoku if I need a tight end. Isaiah Likely, who's fun, but you can't project for a good amount of points, right? Like, where is Isaiah Likely on this list? He is, I don't know if he even cracked this list. This is minimum 8+ projected points per game. Isaiah Likely's not on it. It's so tough to project Isaiah Likely for any points per game. He's almost purely a future bet. And then same thing, I love Basil Tootin, but if you can trade a late second for David Njoku on a team that needs a tight end, I would all day long. Then our 6th trade target here, Tony Pollard. I'm about right on consensus here. He's ADP 122. He's my 125. ADP RB33. He's my RB32. But he's just one of these guys where I'm fine with where the market's valuing him at, but I'm fine buying him if you need a running back, because I did want to make sure I had a running back or 2 on this list. I know you guys are going to read this and be like, you're going to watch this and be like, where's the running backs at? Well, here's where I'm at when it comes to buying running backs in Dynasty. If I'm going to buy a running back, right, like guys like Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker stick out, but if I'm going to pay that price for a running back, I would just rather Quinshon Judkins or Trevion Henderson. And then you can even go up from there. If I want to buy a running back like Devon Achane, I would just rather Amarion Hampton. If I want to buy a running back like Bijan or Gibbs, I'd rather just Ashton Genty. All of these guys are younger, have less miles, less likely to get hurt, have, plenty of years ahead of them where if they just play okay this year, they're going to be in a spot where they can help you contend, right? Ashton Genty's a 1st-round redraft pick. Omarion Hampton's a 3rd or 4th-round redraft pick. These are still running backs who can help you contend, but then they're not going to fall off a cliff after this year as, their age gets older. People start to, once a running back hits 25, all of a sudden it's like, I don't want him anymore. So I'd rather just reset the clock. If I'm going to pay up for a running back, I'd rather be a rookie. We spent all rookie draft season talking about the rookie running back, so I'm not going to say go out there and buy Quinshon Judkins. But if you want a cheap option at running back, I do like the idea of Tony Pollard. He is pretty much free. You can buy him for the 211, 212, 301, something at the 2-3 turn of rookie drafts. And I think that's not a bad price to pay. You're paying for an RB2, which is fine. If you look at his efficiency in terms of yards after contact per attempt, over the last 4 years. It dipped big in 2023 when it was supposed to be, wheels up for Pollard, lead back on the Cowboys. He was coming off of a fractured leg, tightrope surgery. He was inefficient, and then it all bounced back in 2024. He just happened to be on a dumpster fire of a team. Now, I think this team can make some steps forward here. They draft Cam Ward. This offensive line is getting better too, right? They drafted Peter Skoronski in the first round a couple of years ago. He's making steps. Same with J.C. Latham. They also signed free agent Kevin Zeitler. They're starting to make some progress here, right? We're getting a real quarterback. The O-line starting to come into form. And Tony Pollard's just one of these guys where if you look at where he's at on Underdog right now, he's the RB26. This is the RB24 through RB30 on Underdog in terms of where they're going in real money drafts in, May. How do these players project for 2025? He projects pretty well. And if we compare this list of running backs from RB24 to RB30, he is the second cheapest on the list in front of just Aaron Jones. Tony Pollard is 28 years old. Aaron Jones is over 30. So in terms of guys who aren't 30 years old yet, he is by far the cheapest running back on this list. Like DeAndre Swift's half a round ahead. Pacheco's 2 rounds ahead. Brian Robinson's 2 rounds ahead. David Montgomery 3 rounds ahead. So you can buy very similar production for much, much cheaper when it comes to Tony Pollard. Then our 7th buy is like Justin Fields, where we already talked about him on the skyrocketing video, so I'll make it quick. But again, one of these guys. I'm a contending team. I need a quarterback. I do like Gino Smith. He is ADP's 115 as the QB 28. He is my 100 as my QB 27. So we're pretty on par with where we have him among the quarterbacks, but I just have him a tier ahead as somebody I want on contending teams. I'm a big fan of what the Raiders did this offseason. They bring in Pete Carroll. They bring in Chip Kelly, who Chip Kelly and his offenses had the 2nd, 5th, and 12th most yards on the Eagles. It was kind of a shit show when he went to San Francisco, but he can run an offense. They then draft Ashton Genty. They draft Jack Besh. They draft 2 offensive tackles. They draft Dante Thornton. You now all of a sudden have Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer, Jacoby Myers, Jack Besh, Ashton Genty, a pretty good offensive line, and Gino Smith at the center of it all, who is definitely getting older, but at quarterback, that's not the end of the world. And over the last 3 seasons, when you look at yards per attempt, you look at passing grade on PFF, big time throws, turnover-worthy plays, it's all very, very similar. 7.5 yards per attempt, the same since his 32 touchdown season. He just hasn't had his touchdown rate up to that 30-plus touchdown season, but I think at his peak, he can still match what he did in 2022. Now, he was fully guaranteed $66.5 million through 2026, so that's a minimum 2 years of starting for the Raiders, unless if they're so bad this year that they pick in the top 10 and they draft a quarterback, but you're getting minimum 2025 and then potentially also 2026 at quarterback. And if we go back and look at the Mike Clay projections here for the pocket passing quarterbacks, he is the 2nd cheapest behind only Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford, of course, 37. He's 3 years older than Gino Smith, has like retirement, injury kind of concerns. To me, Gino Smith is just much safer, and I will pay the very little bit more you have to pay for Gino Smith than Matthew Stafford. And you can see you can buy him, for the 211. If you're on the clock and you're staring at Tyler Shuck and Jalen Milroe, who I love, but you need a guy who can start for you in week 1 as a contender, I'm fine turning one of those guys into a Gino Smith at the 211. Again, it's a real trade from Fantasy Calc. Then we have our 8th trade target here, Rashad White. He is ADP's 157 as the RB44. He is my 142 as my RB40. So I'm about what? A round and a half ahead, 4 running back spots, and he's just, pretty much free, right? You see what he's getting acquired for. You can buy him for literally a third, a future third, 2 future thirds. I think that he's just somebody, if you want to add running back depth to your team, I think that he's absolutely fine. And you can see here, this is Mike Clay's projections. You have Bucky Irving as the RB10, Baker Mayfield as the QB7. This is going to be a good offense, and even still, with Bucky Irving as a top 12 running back, Rashad White still carves out the RB36 in his projections because he's going to catch so many passes. He's going to be involved in a good offense. And I just like him as a really high-end handcuff, where I tweeted this out back in February, but Rashad White had 50-plus catches last season. He was 8th in PFF pass blocking grade. They're going to have a great offensive line, and Bucky Irving, he's great. I'm not saying to sell Bucky Irving. I'm not saying that Bucky Irving's a fade, but he's 190-ish pounds. He's not going to handle 20-plus opportunities per game, and if he was to go down or get hurt, all of a sudden Rashad White now has a 3-down skill set of between the tackles and catching passes. We've seen him already hit 15-plus points per game, where if Bucky Irving goes down, Rashad White, it's wheels all the way up. So if you find yourself at the end of a draft, like in the 3rd round, or if you just have some future thirds to mess around with, I think Rashad White is a decent buy. And then same thing with AD Mitchell. These are dumpster dive, like, you're selling, right? This is the 308, the 311. And I think AD Mitchell's perfect, where if you're on the clock and you find yourself debating Alec Manor, Torrey Horton, any of these day 3 wide receivers, just take AD Mitchell. He was drafted in the 2nd round, and yes, he didn't have a great year 1, but there's a lot of underlying metrics to feel good about. This is from the rookie receiver report we do in season, where if you look in terms of targets per out run, yards per out run, first downs per out run, he's green across the board. He had a better targets per out run, yards per out run, first downs per out run than Jalen McMillan, than Ricky Pearsall, than Xavier Worthy, than Rome Odunze, than Keon Coleman. Now, of course, he was on the field less. It's a little bit of a small sample, but on a per route basis, he flashed. And then he also scored really well in a lot of these separation metrics, where this is ESPN's open score. He was one of 12 wide receivers here to have an 80-plus open score. It's a pretty dang good list. It's not perfect. Chris Olave, who we mentioned in this video, is on this list. And then if you want a second source, you have fantasy points separation score, where he is 8th on that list as well. So, look, I know that they added Tyler Warren. I know it's a stacked receiver room. I know that you're not crazy about Anthony Richardson, but I do believe in the upside of AD Mitchell. And again, if I can buy him, I will take him over Torrey Horton, who I love, by the way, Alec Manor, Xavier Restrepo, any of these day 3 receivers that you're just throwing darts on. Just give me AD Mitchell instead. Now, again, with all that being said, you can find my trade targets over on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. But if you can't support there, just leave a like, subscribe if you're new. We are growing this channel. I think we're almost at like 3,000 plus subscribers right now, which is nuts. So thank you guys so much for all the support, all the love. We should have a sell version of this video coming out in the next day or 2. As always, leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see y'all in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold,